perfect. All right, everyone, thank you for taking time out this evening to join me on some of the basics of what happens in your college application, some of the do's and don'ts. And what's interesting about filling out the application, or the idea and the concept and emotions that surround it, is that we spend years, teenagers spend about 3 years coming up with their grades, putting in all that effort into getting the right grades in their classes, taking the right types of classes, then also putting in the effort of choosing the right extracurriculars and going in with maybe it's their community service, maybe it's their sport, maybe it's figuring out that one initiative and project that they want to go in on. But then what they don't do is spend time actually putting it all together into the application. So in part because they don't know that they can start early, they don't realize that they can start over the summer. And the other part is because when they're trying to do it over the school year, they're just so stressed out that they honestly don't want to look at this. They barely want to open their website. At that point, all the chitter chatter at school has started about, oh, who's applying where, and how far has everybody gotten, and have they done the college essay? Is it pending? All of this just stress balloon or bubble kicks in, so they don't spend the time that they need to pulling everything that they've done together, which means that after all this effort, going step by step to dot the I's, cross the T's, they shoot themselves in the foot at this very last juncture. So I want to make sure that everyone's aware of some of the common mistakes that families or teenagers tend to make on their applications, and I would almost recommend that you have a second set of eyes take a look at it. Not just because I don't trust teenagers, that's not it at all. It's because, even in my case, there's just so much dull, just basic, tedious information. We're going to take a look at the Common App in a bit, but just tedious information to select on and fill out that there could have been a typo somewhere and I wouldn't have noticed. And it has happened before, unfortunately. Because you just get tired. The teenager is tired, and we're managing their emotions while also trying to check every bit of detail and everything. So just make sure that somebody is taking a second look at the applications. It's not that you don't trust your teenagers, it's simply that it is really, really annoying. So with that said, welcome to tonight's presentation on the whole college application itself, the do's and don'ts. We're going to skip over this part because all of you who have joined are part of my email list. And these are just, while I've written them in as the universities, it's actually a way to say these are all the applications that we've worked on, meaning all the supplementals that we've done. And these are some of them. These are not all of them. But these are just some of the more common ones that we've done the extra essays for, how to do resumes for, all of this other tiny stuff that comes part and parcel of independent universities. So there's some parts that are common to every university, such as the college essay, and then there are these individual weird things. I'll show you Elon's, we'll take a look at a couple, but Elon is one of those examples. So just to say, hey, I'm going to pull up UChicago. That'll be fun to look at. But that's all basically to say that, look, the game is, when you're in senior year, there's tiny things you do that make a big difference. So we want to make sure we're checking everything off and making sure your teen has the best package they can put out. So today we're going to talk about the different types of applications, the admission cycles, because particularly for anyone with a senior, the admission cycles are very, very relevant. And then the do's and don'ts of the Common App. And the Common App is the major platform, the most popular platform that teenagers all across the country use for their college applications, but we're going to see a couple of different types. So, as I said, the Common App is the most commonly used application platform, and that is the one that we're going to be hopping on today. But there are a couple others you should be aware of in case they apply to you. Number 2 on the list, there's no popularity contest on this. There's just another type of application is the Coalition app. Now, the Coalition app is a collection of 150, a little bit more than 150 universities who have come together to make college affordable for students. So if you're filling out the Coalition app instead of the Common App, or even on the university's website, then you're indicating that you would like financial assistance. Okay, now the Coalition app has some top tier universities in there, including some Ivy Leagues. So it's not just, oh, a bunch of no-name universities came together to help us out. That's not the case. It's a few of them are very, very top tier universities who are part of this coalition. So it's all across the board. It's from the very competitive all the way out to state universities or other universities. So you have a mixture of private universities, rather, not state, but private universities that have all come together. So that's the Coalition app. Then we have Systems Shared. Now, Systems Shared are the applications that pretty much, it's the same university, but you're applying to different branches of that university. So if we think of SUNY, so State University of New York, or CUNY, City University of New York, and you have the different campuses, but you have the one major application platform, and then you choose which campuses you want to go into. So that's Systems Shared. Now, of note is that there are a couple of universities that do have these multiple branches, but they're all still on the Common App. Okay, so it's not as if, oh, you're applying to, and I have to double check if SUNY is on there, but it's not as if you have to go to SUNY's website. It's that some may be on SUNY's website, but you also have the option of just going on Common App and getting it done. All right, so keep that in mind. With that said, because I mentioned that Common App doesn't have every university, Common App is about 1,000 universities. And for reference, we have about 2,000 to 2,500 four-year institutions in the country. And that means that Common App has pretty much a little bit less than half of that population. So if you're applying to a university that's not on Common App, such as Endicott, as an example, then you just have to head over to Endicott's website or that university's website and just create a platform or website. It's the basic, but you just have to create the application on the website itself. Okay? Systems Shared, we talked about QuestBridge. QuestBridge is for high-achieving underserved students. So those are from the low income or from the underserved families, but of course the students themselves have great GPAs and just need support and mentorship because they might be first generation, they might be from, again, low income. Ultimately, QuestBridge is a great platform, and it's an application system first to get into the QuestBridge program and then to use the QuestBridge application itself. So it's not just an open-ended, anybody who needs it can use it type of thing. It is a program itself, and then from that program, they help you apply. Now, of note, Connecticut does have a free application date for in-state universities such as UConn, WestConn, SouthConn, all of them. Okay, so that's something to note. Now, we're past that, so it doesn't really even matter. Admission cycles. Okay, this is important, particularly for current seniors. The admission cycles, we have a couple. We have early action, which by far is my favorite. Okay, early action is not binding. And when we say not binding, you're quite literally just applying early because you can. Because you're indicating to the university that, look, I am so interested that I am not procrastinating, I am in this. And you're indicating that to the university that you're on top of your work, you're very interested in the university. It's a way to demonstrate interest. And the best part is that you have a higher chance of acceptance. So without the whole binding that early decision covers, so for contrast, early decision is pretty much like one and done. This is the university I would absolutely love to get into, and if I get in, I am attending. It doesn't matter where else I get in, I am attending your university, okay? And parents, if your teenager does do early decision anywhere, you will receive an electronic contract. So once they hit submit on their application, you will receive an email that's going to be asking you for your e-signature confirming this early decision binding. That barring any serious life circumstance, whether that's a job loss, which means that you may not be able to financially afford the university anymore, whether that is a medical thing, whatever it might be, a family thing, as long as you provide evidence for it, you will be let out of this binding agreement. Now, early decision, early action deadlines tend to be the same, November 1st or November 15th. Most universities only have, any university that offers early action only has usually the one deadline, which is November 1st or November 15th. Early decision, some universities will offer 2 cycles. One will be the November 1st or November 15th deadline, in which case students find out in December for the most part. And then there's going to be a second January ED2, early decision, cycle number 2. All right. Now, I usually tell my students that, and when I'm working with my students, I have them ready to go for this early action deadline. So this year, my batch of juniors going into my rising seniors, that's the right terminology. My rising seniors, we had their college essays done, we had their resumes done, we had extracurriculars written up. Some of them submitted September 15th. That wasn't even a deadline, that's just submitting early. And then October 15th is somewhat of becoming a slightly more common early action deadline as well. But pretty much everybody was done by October 15th. Okay? We want this done and off your plate as soon as possible. And because we're working on it over the summer where there's less work going on for your teenager is taking the time to pull everything together, even if they hate the process. Even if they hate writing all these essays and they hate doing the resume and they hate all of this and they're nervous or anxious and stressed, they still get to put their best foot forward. Now, going back to why early action is one of my favorites, or is my favorite, actually one, because rolling admissions on the same boat, but is one of my favorites is because a lot of universities have either a double or triple acceptance rate for early action and early decision. Now keep in mind, early decision is not everybody's cup of tea. That's okay. Early action has very similar benefits depending on the university. So, and this early acceptance or high acceptance, that applies even for the more competitive universities. So as an example, Duke on average has about a 6.5% acceptance rate in general. However, it has a 13% acceptance rate for the early action students. Okay, so if you're already a strong candidate for that university, you're giving yourself a nice boost by applying early action. That's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2, if once again you are a strong candidate for the university, but let's say if you and I have student applications, okay, right here. We have student applications in our hands, and you make a better argument for your student, and my student is just as good, but I just dropped the ball on something, or maybe the student just doesn't check a box that we need them to as a university because we have too many psych majors, so we'll take your business major, but we can't take my psych major anymore, whatever it might be, right? My student doesn't get rejected. Instead, what they do is their application gets moved from the early action pile into the regular pile, and that's called deferred admission. Okay, now that means your teenager gets 2 shots at the same university. They just have to send in an update of what they have been up to in between that early action deadline, so November 1st, let's say, or November 15th, and the regular deadline, which might be in January. Like, what have they been doing? Send in the mid-year grades. What have they been up to in their extracurriculars? So that is a second benefit. Okay, so like I said, early action, you can only win if you're applying on this, and most students are procrastinating. So the other thing is that you're competing against fewer people, and a lot of universities also try to fill about 30 to 60% of their student body from the early cycles, because they need to know that these seats are filled. They need to know that they're going to get the tuition. They're going to be able to stay running. Okay, so from a business standpoint, which is what the university is looking at, they're going to get the funds that they need to stay running, which means they're going to ascertain as many students as possible from these early piles. So, that's the other thing is they're going to accept many more students. But again, most students are procrastinating, so you may be competing against, let's say, 5,000 or 10,000 students for the 3,000 seats, as opposed to the 40,000 students that would apply at the regular cycle. Okay, so that's the third benefit. And the fourth benefit is the university still has their budget. The university still has the merit aid that they need to give out. They still have the financial aid that they can give out. So if you apply early and you submit your FAFSA and you submit your CSS profile, if applicable, and you have strong grades, strong SAT score, all of that, applying early action puts you in a nice, sweet position for scholarships, merit aid, whatever it is from the university, whatever the university calls it. Everybody has a different program and such available, but you put yourself in the running for all of this, right? Now, that doesn't mean if you apply regular, you have 0 shot. You still have a chance, but once again, you're competing against a lot more people for that same amount of aid, and we don't know how much aid is left. So that's the other factor. And if you don't receive enough aid, you got into the school and you don't receive enough aid, you can always write an appeal letter. And one of my students did that, and he ended up receiving an extra $2,000 or $3,000 from the university that he was going to go to. So it's possible with that early action. Then, of course, early decision we talked about, which, again, that's the binding one. So early action, the university may have one cycle, not every university participates in early action. So early action may or may not exist, one cycle. Early decision most likely will exist even for state universities and may have about 2 cycles. So may have one, but don't be surprised if you see a second early decision cycle. Then the regular deadline, which can vary, depends on the university. Some have regular deadlines in December, some mostly it's January 1st, January 15th, and then some roll into February. Okay, so keep an eye out for those as well. Make sure you're not forgetting anything to send in when it comes down to the regular. And then, of course, rolling admissions. Rolling admissions means that it's an ongoing application cycle between certain dates. So it could be between September 15th to March 15th. Okay. I also happen to like rolling admissions because I had a student submit his Auburn application in September, and we knew by mid-October, before we even submitted for the early action deadlines, whether or not he got in or not. So remember that the name of this game is also to reduce your anxiety. So looking at the calendar, and I'm sure you guys, if you attended this before, you're tired of looking at this, but timeline is very, very, very important. And a lot of the stress, the friction that you might have with your teenager, a lot of just the anxiety that you feel and your team feels can be eliminated, at least dramatically reduced, if we have a systematic process to this. Okay, so the systematic process here is get everything done as much as possible over the summer. That includes supplemental essays, which are the extra mini essays some, but not all universities have. We'll see some of them on Common App. So get all of that done, or most of it done, because keep in mind that your teenager, when the school year starts, has to focus on their grades. That's not a negotiable. They have to keep up with their extracurriculars. So those are non-negotiables, and everybody academically is usually leveling up a little. Students who used to take, let's say, more standard classes are probably trying more honors classes. Students might be taking on an AP or 2 or 5. So your academic load got higher. In your extracurriculars, maybe if you have a leadership position or if you're in a sport, you might not be you're playing varsity, which again, the expectations of you from a training perspective, from a player perspective, they're higher. They're expecting you to show up and they're expecting you to do well. And if you're not doing well, then you're expected to put in the effort on your own to perform, to figure out what the heck is going on so that you can perform for the team. Okay, so these things level up. Now, if we start, so speaking of the deadline terminology, so the do's and don'ts, most families will wait until the January deadlines, or maybe students will do like 1 or 2 early action instead of submitting them all in early action. So here's how to play this. September, if you have a rolling admission university on your college list, just submit the application. Yes, when you come back from the summer, you will have to meet with your guidance counselor because they need to open up your Naviance or School Links or Score, whatever that platform is that holds your in-school recommendations and your transcripts. They need to open that up for senior year. Okay, because in junior year, you'll still have access to this platform, but you won't be able to send in anything. It's just a college search platform, not a requesting and receiving platform. So you will have to meet with your guidance counselor to get that sorted. But as soon as it's sorted, go ahead and start submitting your applications, at least for the rolling. And that way, just like we played it with my student this year, is you'll find out usually in a month, usually 4 to 6 weeks is what they say. Sometimes they say 6 to 8 weeks, but that's more of a buffer time for them. Usually they're back to you in a month. So you'll find out, let's say by October 15th or October 20th-ish, but that's still before the November 1st, November 15th early action, early decision deadlines. Okay, so you'll reduce your anxiety because you're not waiting, you're moving, you're getting things done, you're hearing back. Even if you don't get accepted into that rolling admissions, that's okay, because At least now you know where you stand. You've gotten the first application out, which is the ripping off the Band-Aid sensation for the teenagers, because until then, everything is just daunting. And when they send in the first application, it's almost a little anticlimactic because it's just a few clicks, right? So it's not a fireworks went off in the house after 3 years of putting in effort. It doesn't play out like that, unfortunately, but it's a little anticlimactic. But if they just rip off the Band-Aid, it helps them emotionally navigate the anxiety because they're more likely to get the rest of it done. It's not that big of a deal anymore. So play it that way. And then early action, I highly recommend if your high school or if your university list offers any kind of early action, just do it. Okay, just take the early action option because it's not binding. And yes, you might find out in December, you'll find out, or in January. So a lot of my students are in the waiting phase where they'll find out next month. And there's nothing we can do, but that's less time we have to spend just twiddling our thumbs and wondering, and that buildup of, oh my God, did we apply to enough schools? Did we do this right? There's less time for that, because if you wait until the January deadlines, you have all this time to build up your anxiety and your teens' anxiety, right? All the way until December. Did you do your college essay? Where are you applying? What are you going to major in? Oh no, that has a surprise supplemental. All of that kicks in. So January, yes, there will be deadlines, but look at it this way. If you find out in December you've gotten into a few places and you still want to try in more, you now have that secondary option in January, right? So you're not playing your only card in January. Playing in January is your second or third card, depending on rolling admissions and early action. That's your third card after finding out from all these other places. Then you find out, or you apply in January, and you might find out usually around March or April. But regardless, unless it was early decision, which is the binding one, in which case it's a done deal, when all of these, rolling admission or early action or regular decision, you do not have to accept your admittance until May 1st. So even though you might find out in December, you have all this time to revisit the universities if you need to. You have time to ask for more aid. And your FAFSA, the government aid package will come out in March. Okay, so you'll be able to match everything. The university will also look at your FAFSA. So you'll get the university aid information by the time you get your acceptance letter. But on top of that, the government FAFSA aid stuff will come out in March. So you'll be able to get a full picture of who's giving you how much money. You'll be able to take a look at the 2 or 3 universities, again, that you might have narrowed it down to over winter break, or Feb break and spring break, before making your final decision on May 1st. And on May 1st, that's when, for parents, you're paying that $200 or $500 deposit to hold your teenager's spot in that university. Okay, and teenagers, this is when everyone's on social media posting about where they're going to be next year. So that's all the timeline thing. I like we're coming back to the timeline because it's systematic, it helps you stay organized, and it's ultimately the guiding light in some ways. So a few tips, a couple of things that families, or more like teenagers, don't do when they're approaching their college application. A lot of universities will say, hey, there's this option to attach a resume. Now, there are some students who might not have enough activities, or they might not have enough activities that they can expand upon. Okay, that's fine. Then in that case, you don't have to create a resume. But for most students, you can create a resume. And for a resume, I usually give my students a template, but it's just pick your top three activities and then have 3 bullet points each for it. Because on the application, which we'll we'll see this, but there's only 1 line that you can write for your activities description. So you could have done this activity for 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, but were intensely stressed and learned a lot in that experience. But you get 1 little, maybe 2 sentences max. So your resume is your opportunity to say, okay, yeah, there was that 1 sentence, but that was not enough airtime for all of this that I learned or went through and developed and the person I grew into. So let me actually explain a little bit more about it. So pick about 2 or 3 activities, and then of course your skills and whatever else you want to add on to it. But resume, I highly recommend creating one because a lot of universities will just have an optional. You can attach the PDF if you want to. Then the other optional components tend to be essays. So not necessarily the college essay, that some universities will say you can choose to add it in, but you've already posted it in the Common App, so it's going to go anyway. But these are supplemental essays. So those mini essays that I mentioned, some universities will add in optional components that are legitimate questions, such as expand on your extracurricular activity, or tell us about how you've contributed to the community, and so on. Now, certain optional essays don't need to be answered if they don't apply to you, such as if you struggled in some kind of family or life circumstance which had a ripple effect on your grades and ability to perform in school, in which case maybe that doesn't apply to you. That's okay to leave blank. But the other questions, do them. Okay? A lot of teenagers say, why would I spend extra time? Why would I bother? Right? I'm tired. I don't want to do this. Why would I bother? And simply put, a university admissions officer is not looking at the college application and thinking, how do I complicate my life? How do I add more to my own workload such that I have to stay up at night reading all of this? They're not thinking that. There's a reason they're giving you the optional components. They're giving you the optional components so that you have more airtime to share your perspective and they can get a better sense of your vibe. And they're also looking to see who's being proactive enough to actually take the extra steps. So if there's optional essays, do them. If there's optional interviews, which it is on you, it is your job as the teenager, as the applicant, to know exactly how this university's application process works. So if that university has optional optional interviews, it is up to you to find that out probably when you're in junior year. Or even now, just Google it, so-and-so, just Google it, type in the name of the university, interviews, and then see what pops up for their interview policy. Now, this time, because we're already in November, it's a little late for the seniors to register for optional interviews. You can always check the website, but usually the interviews tend to get booked back in October at the latest, September, October, and they're just carrying them and finishing them out in November, December, and January. But they don't tend to let anybody register because the slots are taken. So double check just to make sure. But if there is something available, then try it out. And you can always email admissions and ask just in case. But just make sure you tell them that you did your homework and you looked on the website and you saw there were no interview slots available. But is it possible? Right? And if they have a cancellation, maybe they'll factor you in instead. So that's the other component most students don't do. Next up, the why us question. So this is a very common supplemental, and universities come up with very creative ways to ask okay, but why do you want to be here? They come up with paragraphs of just detail before they finally get to that question, and some of them will flat out just say, okay, well, what do you like about XYZ university? And a lot of students, a lot of students tend to circle around the generic. They will talk about the campus visit that was beautiful and how they felt right at home and they found their people, blah, 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 blah. Or how much they love the city that the university is located in. Oh my God, it's in New York, it's in Boston. I've always wanted to live in the city and it's great for internships and for jobs and all of that. But that's not the direction you want to go in, right? Or, oh, so-and-so came to my high school and now the marketing rep and now I love this university. That's not the way you want to go about it. Always keep in mind that a university is a business first. They provide this service of an education. So don't tell them about the Greek life you want to be a part of or the soccer club that you want to be a part of. Tell them about their academics and why their academics and what they have to offer match the goals that you have for yourself and for your growth. Then, after you're done with the academic, let's say paragraph or a couple sentences, depending on the word count, then you can tell them about the social life that you'd also be able to have, or this club, or the volunteering center has so many ongoing opportunities for me to participate in the community. You can have all of that as well, but it's not the first thing you put, okay? And while you will hear other college or college admissions consultants, basically my peers, my colleagues, mentioned that you can reuse supplemental essays. That is true for certain essays. If you find yourself reusing your why us, you did something wrong. Yes, you should be able to maybe swap out a few names of classes or programs or something, but there's no just copy paste direct. That can happen if the questions for both universities are like, expand on an extracurricular activity. That you can copy and paste. This is not one of them. Okay, this requires tweaks beforehand. Additional information section. Next step. This is a section, you know what, we're going to take a look at it, but ultimately what happens with the additional information section is this is where you put in all the serious stuff that might have happened in life. So your college essay, and if you've attended the college essay or you watched that recording, then I've said it. I've said that you never write your serious stuff in your college essay. Your college essay is about, or at least not the serious stuff as in the mental health or the family issues or the financial concerns. You don't write about that in the college essay. You write about you, the quirks, the interests, the hobbies you might have, how you grew. Okay, yes, you can refer to them if they had an impact on you, but otherwise you don't mention. But that doesn't mean you leave it out of your application completely, because admissions officers still need a full picture of who you are, the struggles you might have had along the way, because a GPA and extracurricular and SAT score is not enough to paint the full picture. So if you did have struggles along the way, for example, I had a student a couple years ago whose apartment there was an apartment in their building that got to had a fire alarm go off, had a fire, everything, and then he ended up having to stay in a hotel for a month. Okay, and that was one of those, and there was already other stuff happening, but on top of that, this was like the one more thing that added onto that pile. So if that's something, then yes, share that, because simultaneously, while this is all happening in your life, whether it's the late mental health diagnosis, whether it's something in your family, whether it's a medical concern, I've had also a lot of students who've had concussions before, and they've had to either take time off from school, or they now find that some of their memorization or calculation or cognitive, just processing abilities have slowed down. Well, that's something to share. Okay? And that can go in the additional information section. Now, if you don't have anything you want to share of that note, of that serious nature, then use that additional information section to expand upon an extracurricular activity, especially if you don't have enough to create a resume. Then you can use that additional information section to list out any awards and recognitions that might have been missed, or expand on an extracurricular activity. Just something else that provides another insight into you. Okay? And now let's actually go on and take a look at everything I've been talking about. So everyone should be able to see my screen, just double checking that you can. Please post in the chat to make sure that you now see me online on an application and we're no longer on my PowerPoint. Just somebody, or you can unmute yourself, honestly. And just say, yeah, we see I can see it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sure. All right, so in this case, oh snap, I hate when I talk with my hands, and every time I talk with my hands, the Zoom feature, it says, oh, I raise my hand, or it gives me a high five. Let me actually see if this still works. It used to be because I count with my hands and everything, and it used to be if I had two fingers up, like balloons would just pop out from somewhere. But I guess it undid itself, which sucks because I loved having the balloons. And then there's also this thing. I know, super distracted right now, but it's a moment to prepare ourselves before I throw more information at us. Okay. Oh, I did the reaction. I don't want a thumbs up reaction. I want we'll have to play with this later. Anyway, so this is the Common App platform. Mine is a practice account, so I can see everything and I can do pretty much everything except for actually sending in the application. So this is what your teenager is going to see this year or next year, depending on the grade. Now, there's a general section called My Common App. You'll see two labels for it. I'm just going to stick to the menu on the left for direct ease. But the Common App section is the part that goes to every university. Okay, this is a ways to reduce the number of boring tedious sharing the basics of my information work that students have to do, because it's basics. Like I said, personal information, contact details. It's going to ask you about your education background, which is always funny because it's always the boys. Whenever I say parent one, parent two, they're always like, "Mom, what university did you go to? Okay, now when did you graduate?" So they feel the need to do that right when they're on call with me, as opposed to just waiting until later to ask them the questions. But your teenager is going to be asked to fill out your information about what degrees have you gotten, if you have multiples, from where, what year, or degrees, year received, all of that. So parent one, parent two, any siblings, if they're also in university right now. Actually, it's just in general. The university tabs will ask you if they're in university. Education section. Now for the education section, a lot of it is just generic, but the sections I want you to pay closer attention to are the honors and achievements, because a lot of students, for the sake of not having to fill extra things out, will just select no, I have nothing to share. If they select yes, they have up to 5 options that they can fill out for academic honors and achievements, okay, related to your academic achievements from the beginning of 9th grade or international equivalent. So academic, we're not putting the sports stuff in here, but if you have honor roll, if you have the National Honor Society, if you have, let's say, like the Yale Book Award or something, I don't know if that's the real name of the award. There is a Yale Award that one of my students was talking about, but I forgot the name. But whatever that might be, this is a good place to put it. Okay, and don't worry, I'll show you where all the other stuff goes. I'll also show you what to do if you have more than 5 honors and achievements. But this is where it goes. If you add another, you'll get another section just like this pop up, and so on. So this part's important. Then for testing. Now, so they'll ask you, oh, what kind of scores do you want to report? If you check the boxes, then those are the tabs that will pop up to the side, and you'll be able to ultimately enter the information for those numbers. So for example, you're talking about how, Christine, for you, your teenager is done with the SATs, right? I'm just going to use SATs as an example, but the same thing goes to APs. Yes. You can basically go in and enter in their SAT scores. How many SATs have you taken, or number of past you wish to report. So notice it says you wish to report. Your teen could have taken the test 10 times, but you only wish to report the 2. Okay? And because you wish to report the 2, you're really just saying, okay, well, they're going to ask you the highest of your reading, which test date was that from, and then the highest of your math, and what test date was that from. Okay? And if you have any other future sittings planned, then you can also put that in here. Now, one thing to note, this part right here is called self-reported scoring. As you saw, it's quite simple to put things in. It's quite simple to select the scores that you wanted, whether it's SAT, ACT, APs, whatever it is. It's quite easy to put in all this information. Now, it is up to you, as the parents, as the teens, applicants, to know what the university's policy is. Because sending in the official score reports from College Board can cost, I think it's now $18 per report, or $16. I have to look this up again. I have it on one of my PowerPoints. But it costs about $15 to $18, I think $18 per report. And for ACT, it's $20 per report. So if you're applying on average to 10 universities, you're going to be racking up 180 to 200 or more just by sending in all these score reports, official score reports. So because that can get expensive, universities, some of them have said, hey, you know what? We're going to accept that self-reported scoring you put on a Common App. We're going to accept all of this, and then should you decide to attend our university, you can send us the official report. But until then, you don't have to. We're going to trust that the information you provided was accurate, that you weren't lying to us about it. So it's up to you to know which universities have this self-reported policy and which ones require the official scores to be sent in. Now, you can play it safe and just send everybody your scores if that's easier, or you can just know which universities have that policy and go from there as well. Up to you. AP scores can also be entered. How many AP exams scores do you want to report? And then they'll just constantly ask you which exam, what score did you get, which exam, or if you have a plan to take, then it's a future date, in which case you probably won't have a score. You'll just have the subject. Like for senior year, if you're currently enrolled in an AP, then you can put the name in, but you don't have a score to report yet. By the way, AP scores come out July of basically that year. So anyone who's testing in May, they'll receive their scores usually the 4th of July week of. Okay, then the next thing, activities. So those extracurricular activities we were talking about, and you might have seen the whole 1-hour presentation on extracurricular activities, but just a quick, these are all the topics that count as extracurricular activities, whether it's arts, music, clubs, hobbies, all of that. And then, do you have activities you wish to report? Yes. Okay, even if you're sitting at home reading books or playing Dungeons and Dragons, yes. Okay, and then, because if you say no, everything below disappears. Now, the fine print, a lot of students don't read. Please list your activities in the order of their importance to you. It's not asking you in chronological order. Now, generally, it tends to be in chronological order anyway, because chances are, whatever is important to you, you are currently enrolled in it. But it says important to you. Now, you can put your sports in here, you can put all of that. This is easy enough, this is easy enough. Now, this is the tricky part. But please describe this activity. You have 150 characters, which is about 2 sentences max. Really barely make it to 2 sentences. We're talking 2 short sentences, about 50 words to describe this. You can put your, let's say, your chess club awards or your sports acknowledgements and awards, whatever that may, in here. Or you can simply put what you learned and however you grew in here. Okay? 2 ways you can play this. My recommendation is you put in just how you grew in here, particularly if you're not going to have a resume. Actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because whatever you can't put here, you'll put in that additional information section. So if you want to put the awards in here, by all means you can, and then you can have a different write-up in your resume or your additional information section, or you can put your 2 sentences of growth and technical stuff. So I learned to play chess, make mistakes, learning from others, etc. Well, blah, blah, blah. You're putting that tangible, what did you do? But you're not putting the awards here. You can put that in the resume or in the additional information. So you have 2 ways you can play this, and just make sure you incorporate that information somewhere. And also make sure you are consistent. You can't put in a sports award for here, but then the chess award doesn't go here. It goes in the resume. That doesn't make sense. So whatever format you choose, make sure it's consistent. In fact, I probably recommend just put the sports awards and all the awards, put them in here. It's okay. And then you can expand upon it on your resume or on the additional information section. Participation grades. Now, they know not everything runs all year round. They know you're not going to have the exact number of hours because games are different and practices vary by the sport and by season. So it's okay if you give an estimate. Now, this is, let's say one is for your school team, and then you can have a second activity that's for your club team. That's allowed. You can put the same activity twice. One is for school, one is for sport. Okay? So that's important. This is important to note. Now, max, you get 10 activities, but that also doesn't mean you have to feel obligated to fill out all 10. You can just fill out 5 if 5 are the most meaningful to you, and the other ones are just one-day volunteering projects or something simple that you don't think was worth mentioning that you did in 9th grade or 10th grade. All right, so, but the core 5 that you did are the ones that you did maybe 9th through 12th grade, or maybe 11th and 12th grade, maybe 10th through 12th grade, whatever it might be. So it's okay. Don't feel obligated to. There's also a section for family responsibilities, if you have any, and they do have criteria, 4 or more hours spent per week doing this. Then we have the writing section. Now, notice here it says a couple of universities, and these are all from random students. Actually, usually it's probably just the one student. Because they usually, max, they only let me add on 20, so I can't have everybody's universities on there. So if I'm checking their applications or what it consists of, I'll just put everything on here. Not required for these universities for the college essay, but we're already posting the college essay, so it's going to get sent. Okay? You get to pick the prompt that you are choosing to write about. I recommend copying and pasting your college essay in here. And also the other thing students don't do. So if I type in here directly, okay, you have normal font, but usually if you're copying and pasting it, which that's what a lot of students do in general, and also if I'm working with them, is we have it on a Google Doc because formatting is clear, spacing is clear, all of that. everything you paste is going to be automatically bolded. It's going to be spaced double. So if you have one spacing between paragraph, it's going to turn two spaces between paragraphs. So you have to go back in and sort it. You should not just leave it like that. Although I've had students who were like, "Can we just? I don't want to bother." And that's where I have to convince them that if you spent 3 years doing all of this, I think you could take an extra 30 seconds to unbold everything and fix the spacing. This is in case you faced any sort of challenges or circumstances that might have impacted your education. And in that case, I think a lot of students have no impact, but if you do, then you get a box and you have 250 words, which is about 2 paragraphs to write what happened. Now, the other question, this is the one that I keep talking about when I say additional information section. Would you like to share any additional details or qualifications not reflected in the application? Yes, I would. Here is where you can talk about that serious circumstance, whatever that might be, mental health, which actually mental health can also go up here, I believe. Okay, so I don't believe they have mental health here. Okay, well, no, there is mental well-being. So you have separate space to expand upon anything serious that might have happened in the family, divorce, and anything. And then you have this space to expand upon anything. Okay, you can talk about the extracurricular that you absolutely love doing, but you couldn't talk about it in your college essay because your college essay is about a separate topic. I had one student who his extracurriculars were all indicative of someone who's very extroverted, loves being on stage because he was in a cappella, he was in jazz band, he was in choir. And I don't think he was in theater, maybe. I don't remember anymore. But then his college essay was about his interest in psychology. So no reference to his extracurriculars. But then here he wrote in that, by the way, I am highly shy and introverted. So all of these activities are ones I forced myself to do to push myself out of the bubble I had myself wrapped in, because I don't want to miss opportunities. So I don't want to miss experiences I could be having with friends, all because I'm letting my shy nature limit me. So now it puts a whole different spin on the entire application. Okay, so that's like this all of this covers the general part. Now let me show you a couple specifics that students tend to think. All right, so we've talked about supplementals, and as you're seeing, you have the deadlines here. They'll tell you when the deadlines are, and so on. But then, and they have some, not all will put the notification dates, all of that. First up, supplementals. Supplementals can be buried anywhere in here. Unfortunately, this is by the universities. They kind of decide what question and information they want and which slot they're going to put it under. Some universities will have the flat out writing tab and some will not. And then the supplemental might be under the general tab, or might be under the academics tab, or might be under other information. So you have to dig for it. Now with Elon, what happened is that one of my students and I we started, look, this is the writing tab. Yeah. We started in August, when the application officially opens and they have their prompts, we started copy and paste everything into Google Docs. So we have a master list of all supplementals that they're going to have to write. I do this for every student, is that we'll have this master list, the table that they have to check off, because you're not going to go clicking for every single one of these every single time you want to see it. So we had all of these ready to go. And then we checked the application again in, I think, mid-September, late September. And it turns out Elon had added another one, which was, what at Elon has caught your eye? Programs, opportunities, experiences you can't wait to try. Basically, it's a why us, right? Why Elon? And it's a 150, which is about a paragraph. So they had added on a supplemental, which is something to also keep an eye out for. And thankfully we had everything else completed, so this took us like another 20-25 minutes to get done. And this particular student had already written everything out before, had written a why us for another university, and now just had to reformat and shorten. So it was doable. What aspect of your identity do you find most meaningful and why? And that's 200 words max. Now, with these max limits, if you try to go even a word over, it's not going to let you type. it's going to delete, if you copy and paste things, it's going to delete everything after that word count. Okay? Dear God, overhand. It's going to automatically delete everything over that word count. And if, I'll give you an example. Oh, right here, actually. So here it says this is a required question. So if all I do is like spacebar, because minimum is 1. So if for the college essay, the minimum is 250, and if I put in even 249, this red line is going to come up with this, please complete this. You're not going to be allowed to send the application. 3 songs from your perfect playlist. Tell us your top 5. It can be top 5 anything. If you love cooking, it can be recipes. If you love anime, top 5 characters. If you watch or participate in athletics, top 5 moments. And then top 5, and then why are these your top 5? So these are a little different than just the expand on your extracurriculars or why us. Okay. The other one, Colorado has a why us. These are all state universities. They're a little harder. Villanova has basically it has a why us as well. A fancier version of why us. Hopefully that lets me add. It's just a fun example. I love the UChicago prompts when I don't have to be the one direct. Oh, I love watching them and looking at them and reading them, but then when we have to write the UChicago prompts, that's when life gets difficult. Because, let's see. See, notice here, they have a writing supplement section. So UChicago decided they're going to have a separate tab for just the writing questions and everything. So, like I said, it depends on the university. Now on this, choose one of the 6 extended essay options. Please include the prompt at the top of the page. In an ideal world where interspecies telepathic communication exists, which species would you choose to have a conversation with, and what would you want to learn from them? Would you ask beavers for architectural advice, octopuses about cognition, pigeons about navigation, ants about governance? Make your case. Both species and the question. If you could uninvent one thing, what would it be, and what would unravel as a result? Left can mean remaining or departed. Dust can mean to add fine particles or to remove them. Fast can mean moving quickly or fixed firmly in place. These contronyms, words that are their own antonyms, somehow hold opposing meanings in perfect tension. Explore a contronym. Real identity experience. Penny is on its way out. Too small to matter, too costly to keep, but not everything small should disappear. What's one object the world is phasing out that you think we can't afford to lose, and so on. So, ice cream doesn't cause shark attacks. Pet bending doesn't drive the number of lawyers. Margarine consumption isn't responsible for Maine's divorce rate, at least not according to conventional wisdom. But what if the statisticians got it wrong? Choose your favorite spurious correlation and make a case. So, it's crazy. But they let other students decide ultimately what the topics could be. And every year these options change. So no year have we had the same 6 to actually choose from. But they're legitimate writing. So at that point, while they're fun to read, we also have to factor in the fact that these are all creative responses. It's going to take time to write. It's going to take time to think about. And they want these to be 1 to 2 page responses. So this is not a short writing prompt by any means. And yes, UChicago is an exception to such a depth. Actually, that's not true, because I forget which university also had a 500-word why us option. So a 500-word is about a page single-spaced on Word document with size 12 font and 1-inch margins. So it's ultimately, when it comes to the application, where students mess up is not starting early enough, is not wanting to do some of these optional components, or when they do have all of these questions available, not putting in enough thought, just doing it to get things done, and also skipping over important pieces of information, or not being consistent in how they write up their activities, choosing not to create a resume. All of that factors into the application package. So as we go forth and actually figure out, hey, how do we give my teenager the best chance they can at getting all these applications in and standing out, getting their aid and ultimately finding a university that best fits them, getting into the university that best fits for them, just make sure we're accounting for the fact that filling out the application itself is a task, and you want to give it at least 2 to 3 months, factoring in for the essays and resumes and everything. You want to give yourself at least 2 to 3 months to pull it together.